Hello again. I'm Dia Sakai, Assistant Director for Education for the Center for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning, CETL, at Georgia Tech.
Hi, I'm Carol Savino-Sullivan. I'm the Teaching Assistant Development Coordinator at CETL.
We hope you found part one of the teaching statement tutorial helpful. If by chance you didn't get a chance to look at part one, please do so before continuing on with this segment. Carol and I are back to help you with the next section of the teaching statement, and that is the teaching methods. So now that you've identified learning goals, as we did in the first video, you must describe how you'll go about teaching those goals and achieving those goals with your students. So Carol, can you sort of walk us through the next steps?
Of course. So this is your chance to really give us a sense of what is it like to spend a day with you in your classroom. And in order to do that, the first thing you want to do is get very detailed in describing your learning activities. Give us that play-by-play. What do you do first? Next? What do you do last? So give us a sense of the arc. Secondly, I want to see an integration with your learning goals. So if you said that you really want to help your students achieve quantitative reasoning skills, now tell us what is it that you actually do in order to move students further along towards that goal. Third, your method should show that you are responsive to diverse student needs, whether it's learning styles, whether it's their level, whether it's responding to student backgrounds. I need to see that you're aware of that. Fourth, I should get a sense of what is the relationship like between the teacher and the students in that classroom, between students and other students in that classroom. What is the environment in which learning takes place? And finally, I'd like to see that your methods are informed by the available scholarship on teaching and learning, so that you're aware of certain approaches to teaching and that you're making careful decisions about what is the best way to approach your particular goals.
Okay, that sounds great, Carol. So will you share with us a few examples about, a few good examples of solid teaching statements in the area of teaching methods?
Sure. I brought in a couple for us to look at.
Okay.
Let's start with this one from physics, and I'll just pause a minute so you can read it.
Okay.
All right. So this example from physics hits on several of those items that I just mentioned above. So one thing we see is that this instructor begins with an awareness of an effective teaching approach. Namely, I've learned from teaching that students arrive in introductory classes with different levels of prior knowledge. And then we read on, when students hold misconceptions, they will adapt new knowledge to what they think they already know instead of fully absorbing it. And we even have a citation. So we can see this instructor has read about and thought very carefully about what this idea means for their teaching. And then we see how they actually go on to address that particular issue. I administered the force motion concept evaluation, a multiple choice test on kinematics and dynamics. So this is an instrument that's particular to the field of physics that's going to allow them to peer into those misconceptions. And then they use the results from that test to recognize patterns in the way students make mistakes is the key to correcting those misconceptions. So we have a nice sense of the way this instructor goes about working with the students in order to move them along from misconception to actual true understanding.
Okay, that sounds great. That was a pretty solid example.
Mm-hmm.
So how about an example from another discipline?
Sure. I brought in another nice example, this time from industrial and systems engineering. So let's take a minute just to look through that one. So I really love the way this one starts out. Having students solve problems similar to those faced by professionals in industry is highly motivating while preparing them for how to apply concepts to the future careers. A very nice connection to those learning goals that they discussed earlier in the statement. And then we go on to get a specific description of how they go about connecting to what professionals do in the field. They mention doing an assignment for an undergraduate class was a large traveling salesperson problem, which students had to solve using any software that they would like. All right, so now we see, okay, this is the basic idea, this is how we're going to achieve the idea. Then this instructor goes on and gave us a sense of the relationship between the students and the teacher. So the instructor was flooded with students asking for extra office hours that week to learn about the various software and heuristics to solve the problem. So we get a sense of the students really being motivated, seeking out more information and going to that instructor for it. And then the final thing I want to highlight from this statement is the responsiveness to diverse student needs. So if we look at this last sentence, as compared to graduate students, the undergraduates would generally come to office hours less frequently, but this assignment changed that and made them more enthusiastic to learn.
Great. So clearly these two examples are a reflection of several iterations to refine the teaching statement.
Mm-hmm.
So will you be willing to provide us with some examples of statements that are not so far along?
Yeah, so I actually selected two early drafts of a statement from aerospace engineering because I thought it would be helpful for us to spy kind of like a common error that happens in early drafts. So let's look at this first draft of the statement. Okay, so you can see that as compared to the previous ones, this one is very short, it's very brief. You know, we hear lecture, active learning, but it's so general, it doesn't give us that sense of being in the classroom with the instructor at all. So it just needs some more detail. So now let's look at the second, so a later draft of this particular paragraph. Let's read through it. Okay, so in this one, we do in fact have a little bit more detail. We hear about a specific active learning exercise, the think, pair, share. However, now we're not connected to the learning goals, right? So just adding more detail is not enough. We have to understand how does that fit in with where you want to move students in the class. So that would be my suggestion for the next draft of this statement. You know, let us peer in, see how does this work in a specific class with that specific trajectory you're hoping for.
Okay, sounds great. So are there any final thoughts you can share with our viewers on this section of the teaching statement?
Yeah, so in the statement you'll have an opportunity to describe methods probably 2 or 3 different times, and that's your chance to show off a variety of your approaches. So you want to show that you're well-rounded. You know, you might have an example of how you assess student prior knowledge, how you use active learning to enhance lectures, and then how you use group activities to improve problem solving, right? So we get a more complete sense of you as an instructor and not just a tiny window into one particular approach.
Right. Thanks, Carol. So this has been our discussion of the methods section of the teaching statement, and in part 3, you'll see a discussion of the assessment section of the teaching statement, both assessment of the students and the instructor's assessment of him or herself.